Welcome to the Vermont Political Insider Update. This is issue number 3. It is February 20th, recording this here in Burlington. Just wrapped up at the UVM 2020 Industrial Hemp Conference. Awesome show. A lot of shout outs to the organizers, the sponsors. Thanks to our friends at Kimball Brook for hooking up some delicious CBD beverage. And all these guys. Sunsoil gave a great keynote. Quote of the day I heard from them. Back then, people were looking for CBD oil. Now they're being sold CBD oil. Great quote that talks about how the industry's gone. So we've got 3 issues that we're going to update. Issue number 1, S54, where is it at? What's in it? All right, S54 update. Big news today on Tuesday. First thing to know is the vote is going to happen Thursday, not Wednesday. This is due to just a delay. They had to override the governor's minimum wage veto, so cannabis house vote happening on Thursday, not tomorrow on Wednesday. Now we expect this bill to pass. Here in the Democratic caucus room, there were no questions asked earlier, and that, along with the fact they overrode the veto, tells me that leadership is encouraging them to vote, and it'll probably pass on Thursday somewhere around high 80s to 90 yes votes. So what would happen next if this bill does pass? And this bill has not been substantively changed since the last time we talked. 3 commissioners instead of 5. Those are really the biggest differences for most people out there. So if this bill does pass on Tuesday on the House, it would then go to a committee of conference. Now this is where the House and the Senate will select a few all-stars, they'll put them together, and these people will have to hash out the details. Now there's a big difference between the Senate version and the House version, as we know, so there's a lot to be discussed, and this bill could very well end up dying in that conference committee if they can't figure it out or there are other political dynamics. The issues they'll be talking about in that conference committee, again, assuming this all passes and moves forward, the early start for dispensaries. That's something the Senate version did not have, the House does have. Zoning, as far as the agricultural definition and what that could do for farmers or people zoned in ag. And also the idea of the tax structure with a general sales tax versus an excise tax and the question of a local option. So there's a lot more politics ahead and a lot more in this process. It probably will pass on Thursday. Thursday will be the vote. And if it does pass, there will then be that conference committee. They will get together and then send it to the governor's desk. What the governor will do is a whole other question, right? And we probably won't get there for a few more weeks, assuming this all plays out. Roadside saliva testing has been something that he has been strong on, and that is a red line for the Senate and the House. So that could derail this entire thing at the end of this process. But I want to remind people, vote is happening Thursday, not Wednesday, and there will be a committee of conference afterwards. So stay tuned to Vermontijuana, a lot more updates on the way. Item number 2, it was a big week for polls. I want to talk about 2 polls. First, the Vermont Public Radio VPR poll. This came out, top line result, the top 4 most popular politicians in Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders, Senator Patrick Leahy, Congressman Peter Welch, who I saw yesterday, shout out to you, sir, and Governor Phil Scott. So Governor Phil Scott is very popular in Vermont, that remains. In the same VPR poll, they asked if the election happened tomorrow, who would you vote for? 52% said Phil Scott, 29% said Dave Zuckerman. So, Lieutenant Governor's got a lot of ground to make up. Phil Scott, very popular. That's what you take out of this VPR poll, and that remains. Now, Marijuana Policy Project also commissioned their own poll, and kind of confusingly, they came out at the same time. The Marijuana Policy Project poll was asking people broadly, do you support tax and regulate? And to nobody's surprise, over 75% of the respondents they polled said yes. That's because the idea of tax and regulate as a vague idea. Do you support the state getting money from selling weed? Do you support legal weed being sold and bought? That is extremely popular. The devil is in the details, right? And if you're watching this, you're probably somebody in this community, in this industry, and you probably care a lot about what's happening in these details. However, for a lot of people, I think it's a good reminder that for the general public who are not in this scene, that general idea of tax and regulate, very popular, no matter what the details are. The way this works is that we pay the consequences a few years down the road when we have avoidable mistakes that we did not avoid. But however, I want to mention that poll as well because I do think it's significant, and I think that's very accurate. Last but certainly not least, item number 3 on this week's update, we are bringing it back to the farmers. Rural Vermont, this is an agricultural organization. They have lobbyists in the building. They deal with agricultural issues, and they have issued an action alert in opposition to S54. Now, they lay out their bullet points of why they oppose it, everything from the definition of it as an agricultural crop and zoning concerns, to the privilege for-profit medical marijuana dispensaries, to social justice and wanting all incarcerations removed. Big deal to have farming advocacy involved in cannabis politics because this is an issue that crosses over. To bring it full circle, we started at the UVM Industrial Hemp Conference. A lot more anxiety in that room for people who were looking for that CBD pot of gold to save the family farm and didn't find it, at least this past year. So as more farmers look towards opportunities in cannabis with THC, we can expect more advocacy and more involvement from these agricultural groups. Rural Vermont, presently in opposition of S54, has alerted their members to oppose it. We'll see if and how this has any impact on the conversation. I will tell you guys from an insider standpoint, I spoke to representatives on the House Agriculture Committee. They heard complaints, they tried to voice them, and they were overruled. So we'll see if this means that there's any room for these agricultural considerations to be added back in. However, Rural Vermont getting involved is a big deal, and they are opposing S54 presently.